All right, boys, I bring to you my final build diary on the Witchhunter. I was going to do a build guide, but those are kind of lengthy in production, and I actually think a lot of this build is going to be nerfed, particularly mainly just the Herald interaction. And if that triple Herald interaction is nerfed, this tree is going to look totally different, and we're not going to be running the 3 dragons or anything like that. So we'll skip the build guide for now. And I did want to talk about, though, why I think Witchhunter is actually sleeper busted as fuck. And what I'm referring to when I say that is anytime there is a wipe or any sort of league start and everything's fresh and new, while obviously the Witchhunter does fall off a little bit towards the later end of the game, I do think that early on they're one of the premier ascendancies for rushing content and just getting through the campaign. The reason for this being is because of all the percentage damage that the ascendancy offers. And I touched on this a little bit in the last build diary, but I actually went and started a new Witchhunter and have been playing through the campaign. I think I'm at the end of Act 3 and I have like about 5 hours and I think like 5 deaths or something like that. And it is honestly disgusting the amount of clear that you get from just Zealous Inquisition and Pitiless Killer. And once you get to like level 52 and 56 and you add in Decimating Strike, so now you're going into maps with a 3rd ascendancy point, right? You essentially have 3 ascendancies done, and you add in this hood to get that 100% increased effective Culling Strike on top of the passive points down here for this extra 25%. The amount of percentage health damage you deal in the game at that point is you unironically don't even need to actually deal damage, especially once you combine it with Galvanic Shards, because Galvanic Shards completely solves the Culling Strike applying the threshold prior to the damage dealt rather than after. Because of the chain from Galvanic Shards, it completely solves this problem. And also you have Herald of Thunder, which adds that extra hit as well, because all you need is a hit, right? Once you have all of this Culling Strike effect in, and you can actually get a Corruption to get extra 25% here, your Culling Strike is at 150% increased effect. This means you're culling mobs, white mobs at 75%, magic mobs at 50%, rares at 25%, and then uniques at 12.5%. And obviously it's not too great from a bossing perspective, although Shock Burst Rounds totally covers that for you. What this means is that if you have this set up, you have these gloves and you have the corruption on this as well as the passive down here for the extra 25%, you can unironically at level 56 walk into a T18 map with a 120% more monster life modifier. If there's a group of white mobs with a rare in the middle, you can literally deal 1 damage with Galvanic Shards to the entire group and then deal 1 damage with the chain effect from Galvanic Shards, and you will instantly delete the entire group. All you need is be a little lucky on your Decimating Strike rolls and a little bit lucky on your Zealous Inquisition procs. If those 2 things happen, you will literally delete that whole group. They'll just be gone. You don't even need to actually deal more than 2 damage because of how the proccing works, right? If you get 1 damage out, they take Decimating Strike. You just need a couple 30 or 25 to 30% rolls because you're going to be culling white mobs at 75%. Assuming they all get cold, or they all get hit by that, they would then be cold by the chain lightning effect from Galvanic Shards. Then a few of them proc Zealous Inquisition. The rare also gets cold at 25% on top of taking ideally 30% on Decimating Strike. You will need to get lucky, I'm not gonna lie, but it is possible is the point. And you know, this is at the hyper extreme. If you're doing this even a little bit in your early game maps, I mean, even in campaign with just Zealous Inquisition and Pitiless Killer, it's already cracked as fuck, let alone adding all this in. But you get a couple of lucky procs on Zealous Inquisition on top of that rare from the surrounding mobs, it literally dies. This clear early for how little the investment is required is absolutely nuts. And this sort of low investment clear that automatically scales perpetually and deletes everything from the moment you get it off the ground, and it's super cheap, I think is such a massive advantage in the game, especially early on when no one really has access to good items. It's very difficult to get a lot of damage from a good weapon because there just is not a whole lot of good weapons in general. But then on top of that, I think the game is hyper focused around clearing right now, far more so than PoE 1 ever was or ever has been to my recollection. Clearing is king in this game. No one gives a fuck about boss damage, especially with how the boss is kind of stair step. You really don't need to have that crazy of a single target early on. You know, it's only when you have maxed out bosses, T5 bosses, and then, you know, for actually map bosses, you have the total 10 points tree maxed or whatever. That's when you're going to need the damage. But by that time, you know, the league will be a lot older. You'll have the opportunity to buy good weapons and scale your damage into the single target. So it's really just about covering clear early on. And I don't think that is going to change for a very, very long time. The game is kind of literally built around you turning a corner and getting casting Couch Bukkake by a bunch of fucking mobs the moment they see you on screen. They literally bum rush you, unlock you, take your lunch money, and fucking leave. And I think that having the ability to auto mitigate that problem, because your clear will be absolutely nuts forever, is such a huge advantage early on. And that's why I think that the Witchhunter is honestly going to be fucking cracked. But of course, to acknowledge the glaring problem with all of this is that right now, crossbows are the most clunky, stick in the mud, clanker, fuck ass, idiot weapon in the game right now. The amount of times it just jams or what the fuck ever happens, and how insanely obnoxious it is to swap between bolt types is like this otherworldly motivation to butt chug bleach and test my body's tolerance to it. Like all of that in combination with the fact that you actually have to spend like quite a few passive points to kind of make crossbows feel good, and then on top of passive points you're also investing gem slots. It's just kind of a lot to get this fucking thing off the ground. Now, that being said, I do think all of that is going to be fixed. 100%. And maybe this is a hard copium problem. I don't think it is. I think that a lot of the weird like little functionalities like the quote unquote jamming or the how clunky it is to swap between bolts, I think all that will be fixed. I think also too, crossbows will probably see a pretty significant buff, I would imagine. I don't think that the higher top end damage is even remotely equivalent for considering all these other things, whereas a bow doesn't have any of these problems, has no passive requirements, no gem requirements. It also gets a quiver. I think it'll probably be raised in power quite a bit. And assuming all that gets fixed, that's really the only issue with the build right now. To talk a bit more about the strengths of the build, one of the things that Merc has going for it is movement speed. Between these nodes right here and these two over here, we get 10% on kill and 16% in total. Movement speed, unironically, might be the best defensive stat in the game. Like, you will dodge so much shit in maps just by walking around a little bit faster. And the fact that Witchhunter just has really clean ease of access to all of it is really, really nice. And it's something I've learned, especially after picking up a pair of 35% movement speed boots. I really just never, ever actually die in maps, of course, to anything other than fucking on death effects. But in addition to the movement speed layers, Witchhunter just has, or rather Merc, has access to just really great hybrid armor evasion nodes over here and just in general. Once you actually start stacking your armor and evasion, and I'm not really spec'd into it, this is just kind of half-assed doing it, you actually become really, really tanky when you're mapping. And, you know, I ended up dropping Cloak of Flame as well as, you know, Blasphemy with Enfeeble. I honestly don't think those are even necessary. Witchhunter is an example of, you know, a good defense is a good offense. And especially in campaign, when you're just wiping shit with the clear from Galvanic Shards, Pitiless Killer, and Zealous Inquisition, you just never actually take damage in campaign. Like I said, I've only died on my Witchhunter, I think about like 5-ish times. And realistically, if I ran that back, I would probably finished Act 3 by around like the 4-hour mark if I was really hard gunning it. And on top of that, I probably wouldn't die at all. Most of my deaths have been to like, you know, me opening shit and trying to ID stuff while I'm in the middle of mobs and something like that. And that would be totally SSF, bare bones going forward, like a totally fresh start. But overall, Witchhunter becomes very, very tanky in the mapping phase of the game. Once you grab just a fat chest like this, where it's got, I think this is actually pretty low in armor and evasion. I don't know what the higher numbers are, but it's got a killer life roll, ton of res, that sort of thing. Once you invest into this defensive layer, Witchhunter, in combination with the movement speed, it is very, very hard to die in maps, with the exception of on death effects that will kill you every time because they're just fucking absurd. And also too, this is mapping survivability. It doesn't really count when it comes to bosses. Obviously, bosses just perma one-shot everything forever, and hopefully that will be fixed and they'll buff life and armor, and maybe bosses won't just auto-kill you the moment they touch you. But until that point, mapping-wise, the character is very, very safe. And yeah, I literally, if you take away on death effects, I probably die maybe once out of 100 maps, straight up. You literally never die. Also, to give a quick shout out to everyone in the last build diary I did get my single target damage problem figured out. Or rather, I just read everything that you guys said and copied it completely for the setup I have now. I didn't realize that shock burst rounds, the little AoE effect, actually hits the mob that you're hitting with shock burst rounds. So it's insane in terms of damage output. So we have that problem solved. This is against an Atlas Max boss in a level 80 map, and I don't think it has any health modifiers or anything like that. But yeah, to keep glazing the build even more, I want to point out how absolutely busted Galvanic Shards is. I honestly think this ability might get nerfed. I really hope it doesn't. But the fact that you get it so early and it hard carries your clear for the rest of the game is another reason why I think Witchhunter will just be insanely strong. Galvanic in combination with Herald of Thunder, because you get them both around the same time, between those abilities, you get all the hits necessary to proc your Culling Strike and everything else, and then that bringing you to Shock Burst rounds. The character has such a smooth progression with a kit that deals with everything. It's gonna be one of the best starters by far. To cap it all off by going back to my actual Witchhunter right now, I think I'm actually done with this build. I don't know if I can stomach any more endgame mapping. Jesus Christ, it is just so rough right now. I'll probably start my Warrior, but to kind of give you guys the finality of this character, I ended up getting one of these I bought it for 14 div. I divined it one time and got 4/4. Thank fucking God, because I had literally nothing left. I don't know if this is like the optimal damage setup, but this jewel is so beyond busted. I can't imagine getting a ton of value, because obviously like a lot of this is garbage. This is total garbage, complete garbage. This is okay, useless. This is okay as well. The Herald effect is kind of nice right now. This is fucking complete garbage. But I mean, literally, this is like 120% more damage. This is so much damage. It's very, very hard to pass up. And you would have to equate to this, you would have to like fully invest in crit or something like that. I truly don't know how you would account for the amount of damage this gives you. And this is just such a conveniently located, notable cluster. It's unfortunate that these are so dog shit. I mean, honestly, these are the best nodes out of these. These are completely useless, but that's kind of where I ended up on damage. I think if I wanted to, if I was going to go more well-rounded, I would drop out these nodes over here, these over here, and drop this, and then throw all that into the hybrid defensive nodes. But the reality is I don't need any more defense. After getting rid of Cloak of Flame, which was honestly just a crutch anyway, and I don't think it's necessary. I think the problem is that you just don't really take fizz damage. It's not fizz damage that kills you, it's elemental damage. Like, who gives a fuck about fizz? Especially when you have even 45% evasion is still cracked, and 27% armor is plenty. Like, fizz is not really an issue. Defenses are just not an issue in general, and no amount of defenses will save you from on-death effects, because they're the only thing that actually kill you. But they deal like 8 billion damage. There's absolutely no way to mitigate them whatsoever. And I also run on this guy, I run some rippy ass maps, like 54% damage cold, 50% damage lightning, 48% more monster damage, and you just really don't die to anything other than on-death effects. And I will also point out, you can have 0 damage modifiers on a map. The on-death effect will still instantly kill you no matter what. So it's kind of where this build ended. I did end up getting a bit of a better crossbow. It still sucks ass. An ideal crossbow, you would have that fizz damage up there that adds to fizz. Then we'd hit, instead of fire damage on the prefix, we would get elemental damage with attacks, because you can get literally like 133% or something. But maybe more percent fizz would be better. I don't know, but it would be one of those two things. Obviously, attack speed is cracked. We want prod skills, like +7 to prod skills would be fucking nuts. And then, although that would make the mana pretty difficult. And then, of course, the last suffix would be load of bolt. I think an additional bolt would probably be better as well. There might be some other suffixes, but that would kind of be the ideal crossbow. Everything else is pretty straightforward. Maybe drop Rizlathas later on for just a different belt. I don't know what I would do it for. Again, in the build where we're not running triple herald, you would end up taking these gloves and this helm, not run triple herald. You wouldn't take Rizlathas because you just wouldn't be able to afford it from the resistance perspective. But in that build, you would only have the single Herald of Thunder active, and you would not take Decimating Strike, and you would fix your clear with Zealous Inquisition. Because no mercy Witchbane, this is still pretty solid. This is 30% more damage. And something that is weird that I don't totally understand, it feels like 30% more damage on an attack character is way more impactful than 30% damage on a spellcaster. But other than that, that is all she wrote for this bad boy. I still never got my 6 links. Like, what is my time on this, dude? I have done so much magic finding. Yeah, 4 days. Okay. I was literally I was in maps at like 16 hours or something. I think it was like a 15-hour campaign. So whatever that is, minus 15, that is how much time I spent in maps. And I've been magic finding, hard juicing towers and shit, like 150 quant maps, 200% rarity with fucking, I think that my character's current rarity value is like, yeah, 134. I have not seen a single fucking 6-link Jeweler's Orb. So, do with that what you will. Overall, this is where I ended up with this character. Honestly, he was amazing. I was trying to avoid stat stacking or anything that was like obviously super busted. Of course, the Herald interaction is a bit of a meme, but honestly, this is the budget way of doing it, so I don't feel too bad about it. I have to say, the Witchhunter is one of the most fun characters I have ever played in PoE, either 1 or 2, ever. I mean, it was just a blast from start to finish. I I am hoping that on the next wipe or the next patch that they don't release the Huntress, so I can do a proper Witch Hunter League start, and I will probably be streaming by then, hopefully. And if they do release Huntress, it will suck because I'll be 1,000,000,000% playing Huntress forever, because my heart in ARPGs has always been the Javzon from Diablo 2, and the fact that I will be reunited with my long lost love from 20 years ago is going to be like waking up on Christmas morning. So I will have to play it, but ideally I can get one league or one wipe before I have to do that, and I can see how good my Witch Hunter theory is. We'll find out, I'm sure. Anyways, guys, I'll see you in the next one. Deuces.